free data or whatever. Let's talk to technology and mobiles expert Ernest Doku from Uswitch. Good morning. Look, there's not a huge amount to complain about with this, is there?
Well, I guess it's good news at the outset, but as you say, it's still a year away until we finally see these roaming caps sort of banished for good. It's been a situation where consumers travel abroad, they're not really familiar with the costs of actually making a phone call, sending a text, and most importantly, using data when you're abroad. So these changes are a really good step in the right direction. They've been chipping away, but finally, in a year from now, we'll see them gone for good.
It's positive news. We need to look at people sticking their head in the sand a little bit, though, because we see it particularly when they're outside of Europe, and then you go into the States or what have you, and they're Instagramming everything and looking at Facebook all the time and coming back with bills of £4,000 or £5,000. We've got to be aware of the implications of using our phone abroad, haven't we?
No, you're certainly right. Sort of research that we conducted at Uswitch saw that 27% of consumers actually thought it was already free to sort of roam when you're on your mobile in the EU, and 26% were actually unaware that data, which is one of the most important elements, is actually capped at €50.
Well, it's interesting because obviously you're from Uswitch, so you're doing all the comparisons. Where is this going to leave the phone companies? Now, mine certainly, I don't pay any extra in Europe at all because it's part of my deal.
Precisely.
That I pay for. But this removes a competition barrier.
But I guess you're seeing the competition right now. People are really getting out ahead of these sort of roaming caps and delivering really good deals for consumers. You've got the likes of Three, who've kind of led the way with their feel-at-home packages, enabling you to take your pool of minutes, text and data with you when you go abroad. And Tesco Mobile have kind of followed suit with something very similar for the EU. But you're totally right in terms of consumers travelling further afield. The concern is really that the bills can be significantly more expensive.
I mean, it certainly does look like good news on the surface, but there's been some... The fact that there won't be these charges internationally will be reflected in domestic costs, so our general bills might rise as a way of them sort of recouping that money that they'll be losing out on.
Sure, I think it's definitely one of those cases where the slower providers who haven't necessarily delivered great deals to consumers may find ways to raise bills back at home, but I think that's definitely the case where you look at the deal that you're on now, look at some of the providers that are actually doing really good things, not whether you're here or whether you're abroad, and consider switching.
Look, I know you won't be able to give us a definitive answer on this, but you know how the companies think and how they operate. There's been talk about all these price reductions and removals in the whole European debate, and say if we're out of Europe, this will all change. Once this comes into force, well, as it is doing now with this big cut, companies aren't going to want to, or in terms of the market, be able to row back on it whatever happens, can they?
I guess from a sort of Uswitch perspective, we're all for the consumer having the best deals possible, and we hope that providers sort of see sense irrespective of the outcome and deliver those best deals to consumers. They've got sort of global networks where they're able to broker deals that really reduce prices, and we've seen some networks do that, so we hope that they'll continue whatever the outcome.
And in terms of the changing competition here, because I say, you know, companies that offer good deals in Europe aren't going to be able to offer those anymore because everyone's going to be on a level playing field. Is there a possibility then that actually there could be further competition, further price wars on the whole domestic service?
I think in terms of domestic services, a lot of people are trying to innovate in different ways, whether it's offering different bundles of minutes and texts, offering family sharing packages that enable you to use your data across different members of the family. So on the surface, all the networks seem the same, but they're trying more and more beyond their brand to differentiate in key ways to really bring down the costs to consumers. So comparing is more important than ever.
News for the consumer?
Hopefully, but next year is when the great news comes.
Okay.
Do you know, I would like to talk to you for several hours going through the intricacies of what is available, because I love all of this sort of stuff. I find it fascinating. But sadly, we can't, because you'll want to go back to bed, I think. And it's good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the Education Secretary, Nicky Morgan, is talking to head teachers this morning. They're holding a conference in Birmingham. This is what she's had to say in a